Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Nazir. We are up to Perek Daled Mishnah Gimel. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Ranbayev, Eliyahu ben Burcha Israel of Chana bad Miriam, and Sason ben Raya, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen, and Leavdir ben Chaim Lechaim, V'derefua Shelemav Daniel Shlomo ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Cholei Israel. The Mishnah now explains what happens when a woman violates a Nazirut vow that her husband cancelled without her knowledge. If a woman made a vow of Nazirut and she knowingly drank wine or made herself tameh from a corpse before her husband cancelled her vow, she receives the 40 lashes that are the punishment for violating these biblical prohibitions, even if her husband later cancelled the vow. Now this is an expression of when we say 40 lashes, a person really receives only 39 lashes, which is 40 minus 1, as the Mishnah Makot, chapter 3, Mishnah 10 explains. She receives lashes only if she violated the law intentionally, knowing that she was forbidden to drink the wine or make herself tameh, and only if she was warned in advance not to drink the wine or become tameh. Now, the reason that she receives the lashes even if her husband later cancelled her vow is because the husband's cancellation releases her from the vow only from that moment on, but does not cancel it retroactively. Unlike a sage who annuls a vow retroactively, a husband cancels his wife's vow only from the time of the cancellation and forward. Since she violated the Nazirut restrictions before he cancelled it, she was a Nazirah at the time she violated the law, and she deserves lashes for those violations. Hefer lah bala v'ilo yada shefer lah bala. If, however, her husband cancelled her vow for her before she committed any violations, but she did not know that her husband had cancelled it for her, because a husband may cancel his wife's vows even without her knowledge, as it says in Yorodea, chapter 234, halakha 28. And she drank wine or made herself tameh from a corpse, thinking that she was still in Nazirah, and she does not receive the 40 lashes because she was no longer in Nazirah when she drank or became tameh. Since her husband cancelled her vow beforehand, she was not in Nazirah when she drank the wine or became tameh from a corpse. The next Tana teaches that in this case, as in similar cases, the courts administer a different penalty. Rabbi Yehuda says, although she does not receive the 40 lashes that are given if one violates the biblical prohibition, she does receive the rabbinic variety of lashes that are given by the courts for rebelliousness. Now, these lashes, makat mardut, which are authorized by the rabbis for cases of rebellion, are less numerous than the biblical lashes. They are given by the court according to the needs of the situation. In this case, the woman receives them for acting with sinful intentions, as the Gemara discusses on page 23b in Masechet Nazir. And that is the Rabotai of Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Dal now discusses when a Nazir completes his term of Nazirut and is ready to shave his head and return to everyday life, he must bring 3 animal offerings to the temple. These are a male lamb as a nolah, a female lamb as a chatat, and a ram as a shlamim, as it describes in Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 6, verse 14, and Mishnah chapter 6, Mishnah 7. He also brings 20 loaves of bread, 10 of which are mixed with oil and 10 of which are smeared with oil. These loaves are baked as unleavened bread, matzah. They are not offered on the altar, rather one of each kind is waved next to the altar together with the foreleg of the ram and then eaten by the Kohanim, while the rest of the loaves are eaten by the Nazir and his guests. Now, before any offering can be made, the animal to be offered must be consecrated, made holy by its owner for that purpose. The owner does this by saying, this animal is an olah, or this animal is a chatat, etc. Once this has been said, the animals become holy and may be used only for the purposes for which they were consecrated. This Mishnah discusses what happens to animals consecrated by a woman for concluding offerings when her husband cancels her vow of Nazirut before they are offered. If a woman made a vow of Nazirut and she separated the 3 animals required for concluding offerings and consecrated them, and her husband then cancelled the Nazirut for her, the law is as follows. Now these animals can no longer be offered because the Nazirut has been cancelled, and she therefore does not have to bring the concluding offerings or perform a concluding ritual. So the Mishnah says, Im shelo hayta behemta, if the animal she consecrated belonged to her husband, they go out to the fields to graze with the rest of the flock. meaning they are not considered holy. Although a wife has a right to take animals from her husband's flock to use as offerings, this right allows her only to take the animals she needs to fulfill her obligations. Now, generally, a husband is required to provide his wife with the animals she is obligated to bring as offerings. Since she is not obligated, since she ends up having no obligations, they were not hers to consecrate, and the consecration therefore never took effect. Because a person cannot consecrate something that is not his, as it says in Arachin chapter 7, Mishnah 5. However, if the animals she consecrated belonged to her, now, although a husband generally has control of his wife's property during their marriage, if someone gives her a gift on the condition that her husband should not have any control over it, the gift takes effect. The animals she receives through such a gift are hers alone. So if the animals were to be hers, in which case they were hers to consecrate, they remain consecrated, made holy, even though they are no longer needed. Since the husband's cancellation works only from that time forward, she was still a Nazirah when she consecrated her animals, so the consecration was therefore effective. Therefore, the Mishnah says, "Hachatat tamut." The chatat is left to die. There is a halacha leMoshe Sinai, oral law received at Mount Sinai, that a chatat whose owner has died must be left to die. Here too, since her nizirut has been cancelled and she does not bring any concluding offerings, her chatat is like that of a person who died and can no longer bring a chatat offering. The olah tikrav olah. The olah should be offered as a voluntary olah offering. Vashlamim tikrav shalamim. And the shalamim should be offered as a voluntary shalamim offering. Olah and shalamim offerings can be brought as voluntary offerings even when there is no obligation to bring them. Therefore, although the olah and shalamim animals she separated can no longer be brought as nazir offerings, they may still be brought as voluntary offerings. And this is the law for all olah and shalamim offerings whose owners died. And the meat of the shlamim may be eaten only for only one day and one night, as is the law for a Nazir Shlamim. Now the meat of a Shlamim offering is eaten by the owner of the offering and his guests, except for a portion that is given to Kohanim. A voluntary Shlamim may be eaten for 2 days and the night in between, as it says in Zvachim, chapter 5, Mishnah 7. However, since the Shlamim was originally consecrated for Nazirut, it must be treated with the stricter laws of a Nazir offering, which is eaten for only 1 day and a night, as it says in Zvachim, chapter 5, Mishnah 6. Ve'enan te'unin lachem, but the loaves of bread that usually accompany a Nazir Shalamim offering are not needed for this Shalamim, since the woman is no longer Nazirah. The Torah says of the loaves brought by a Nazir that the Kohen should take one of each kind and place it on the hands of the Nazir to be waved. From this we learn that the obligation to bring the Nazir breads applies only to an offering whose breads will be waved in the hands of a Nazir as part of his concluding ritual. Since the woman, in this case, is no longer Nazirah, and her Shlamim offering is not being offered as a Nazir Shlamim, this offering does not require the Nazir breads. Now the Mishnah has until now dealt with the woman who consecrated animals for a Nazirut offering. The Mishnah now deals with the woman who consecrated money with which to buy her Nazirut offering. A person may consecrate coins to be used for buying animals for his offerings. He does so by saying these coins are for an olah or for whatever offering he needs to buy. These coins become holy and may then be used only to buy that offering. When he buys the animal with them, the holiness transfers from the coins onto the animal, and the animal automatically becomes consecrated with the type of holiness that was in the coins. In the case of Nazirut, where the person needs several different offerings, he can simply say, these coins are for my Nazirut offerings. In this case, the coins do not have the sanctity of any one of the Nazirut offerings in particular. Rather, they are subject to special laws, as the Mishnah will explain. If she had unspecified money, meaning that she had set aside one lump sum of money to buy her Nazirut offerings, but she did not designate which coins would be used for which type of offering, and then her husband canceled her Nazirut, the money should be dropped into the temple chest designated for voluntary communal offerings. The money in these chests was used to buy olah offerings to be offered by the temple on days where there were few offerings, as says in Shkalim, chapter 6, Mishnah 5 and 6. These offerings are brought on behalf of the entire community of Jews, not for any individual. Although some of the money she separated was certainly meant to buy a chatat, and such money must be destroyed, like we will see below. Halacha leMoshe Sinai teaches that unspecified money that cannot be used for the sacrificial purpose should be used to buy communal olah offerings. Ma'ot mefurashim, if she had specified money, meaning she had designated separate coins for each of the 3 Nazirut offerings, then the rule is as follows: Dimei chatat yilchu liyam hamelach, the money that had been designated for the chatat should go to the Dead Sea, meaning it should be thrown into the Dead Sea to be destroyed. Just as the animal designated as a chatat must be left to die when it can no longer be used, so too the money designated to buy a chatat must be destroyed when it can no longer be used for a chatat. Lo ne'enim, one may not have any benefit from these coins because they were consecrated for a chatat and therefore possess sanctity. V'lo mu'alim b'hen, but if one does benefit from them, he is not subject to the mi'ilah penalty for using them, since they can no longer be used to buy any offering. The mi'ilah prohibition forbids a person to have any personal benefit from consecrated items. Someone who violates this prohibition must bring an asham mi'ilah offering to atone for his sin. However, when the Torah speaks of mi'ilah, it says that the person misused kodshei Hashem, things that are holy for Hashem. Since this money must be destroyed, it is not considered holy for Hashem. Therefore, a person who benefits from this money is exempt from the mi'ilah offering, and the prohibition to use this money is only rabbinic. The money for the olah should be used to bring an olah offering, and one is subject to the mi'ilah penalty for having benefit from them, because these coins can still be used for buying an offering. They are therefore still holy for Hashem. The money for the shalamim should be used to bring a shalamim offering, and the meat of this shalamim may be eaten for 1 day and 1 night, like a Nazir shalamim. But the loaves of bread that usually accompany a Nazir shalamim are not needed for this shalamim, since the woman is no longer a Nazirah, like we explained earlier. Now the Mishnah deals with money that belonged to the woman. If the money belonged to her husband, all of it becomes chulin, unsanctified regular money, when he cancels her Nazirut vow, like we explained at the beginning of the Mishnah in regard to animals. And that is in Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.